Hello again and welcome back. This lecture is about section 1 of the Noah White paper in the arts and healthcare environment. So, as I was saying earlier, um, this paper is designed to present an overview of the current state of the arts and health field, its history, where it came from, and then after identifying 6 major sections, unpack each one at a time, and then offer suggestions or recommendations to further the field. So, when we're talking about arts in healthcare environments, there's 20 plus years of um, evidence and research that communicates a basic point, which is we're affected by our physical environment. And if we tend to beautifying and creating uplifting environments, we can improve the emotional and physical well being of the patients that we serve, visitors, family, and then, of course, the staff that work there. And I'm not going to do the citation right, but it starts with, I want to say, Ulrich, early back in the day. Although you can go even further, and Florence Nightingale, which you've probably heard from 100 years ago, was really an advocate for cleanliness and also the physical beauty of a patient's space in order to make them, um, to strengthen them and fortify them because conditions can be quite brutal, and they have been over time. But this study was something very basic about the difference between the healing time if someone was forced to look out at a brick wall in their room, and or the other was given a window to look out at nature, or even I believe in the same study, it was a picture or a painting of a nature scene. And it might be intuitive to those of you that are listening that who wants to stare at a brick wall? But sometimes these instincts have to be turned into research questions and then evaluated, looked at, considered in a scientific method. And in fact, um, it was shown to be more positive to have um, nature as part of a healing space. And essentially, that's what we're getting down to with um, healing or healthcare environments. That there's teams of uh, architects, landscape designers, artists that work to create these healing spaces. And that can be courtyards, gardens, interior, exterior, lighting, etc. Um, and also within that same umbrella, we could look at permanent and rotating displays of art, and that they can have a lot of purposes and value to these healthcare spaces. So you've read about the professional profiles of the specialists in the field, and there's a very succinct summary of what architects can contribute and the difference between those that are creating the structures and the landscape architects that are working with the grounds. And they're in conjunction with the interior designers who are providing the overall look and ambiance of the furnishings. And another specialist for the field would be the consultants, art consultants that are steering the aesthetic or artistic vision of a certain space or a wing or the entire facility, that is holding up high standards, that's working with appropriate, with artists who can work in appropriate materials. And then healthcare art administrators, they might be curating shows, purchasing artists' work, commissioning them, which means to say, here's a specific space, here's a specific purpose, let's work together and you'll create something original for that solution. I hope you guys can't hear the dogs barking in the background. It's a busy, busy world. Finally, another professional specialist in the field would be the artists that are creating these sculptures and installations, which an installation is essentially a room full. The room itself and its furnishings are the piece rather than a single artwork on the wall or on a pedestal. So much of this, since we're in the introductory phase, is talking about this very broad field, and there's a lot of moving parts in terms of the people, the materials, the location, and the purpose. So the architectural design of healthcare facilities are a strong group of professionals, and they've standardized their process, which is called evidence-based design. And this deliberate attempt to base the decisions that they make on the evidence that's available, and all in order to achieve the best experiences for the patients, the clients, the staff, as well as the stewardship of money and resources. And you wouldn't think it would be as complicated as it is, but you would imagine that if you're working with state and federal regulatory requirements and safety guidelines, and we haven't talked about infection control, but that's one of the issues that we hear again and again in this business. Keeping people safe, keeping materials and surfaces safe. And another major consideration is the type of work that's selected, because not all subject matters are appropriate or considered uplifting. And certainly it helps to be in cooperation with your culture and the location and the members of your community. I will also say, too, and this will come up again and again, that in hospitals or healthcare compounds, campuses, there's a very strategic use of the arts and design that help the clients and the people that use those facilities navigate, or the fancy word is wayfind, through really, either giant or complex areas. I know that at Sanford Sioux Falls, if there weren't specific artworks, I couldn't find my way from the cancer center over to the children's hospital. There's specific paintings I have in mind that that's the elevator I take, or I turn at this sculpture, and it isn't by accident that they would change color, texture, artwork in order to support the wayfinding within the healthcare facility. I hope this is helpful. Um, Designing landscapes for health is a whole nother field, and I have the privilege of working with Annette Ryder, who provides us this quote. She's one of the main executive team for NOAA, and has been doing it in this designing for over 30 years in California. Her company's called Aesthetics Inc. Properly envisioned, art does not just supplement or complement the effects of a garden. It amplifies those effects. Virtually every aspect of the garden is an art component or a potential art component. Walkways, furniture, walls, gates, and other elements are as much part of the art aesthetic of a garden as are the items as sculpture, fountains, and murals. It is this holistic approach in which the whole garden environment is, in fact, an integrated art experience that will make the garden experience exceptional. We've gotta look at some of these, don't we? We've got to take some of the examples that we see on the pages of this white paper and go to those sites and explore more. And in terms of the interior design and the visual arts collection that the facility would have, that takes the stewardship of individual or team that are overseeing um, the look, the approach of whatever display the facility ends up paying for and installing. So careful planning with an arts consultant. There's often, for large organizations, a collection plan and written art policy. So that's outlining what the, when you say aesthetic standards, um, you know, what types of work are going to be collected or displayed. And it's okay. Um, we just went through a collection period here in rural South Dakota, and based on budget and based on the clientele, no, we're not pulling in museum pieces from one coast or another, but it was perfectly um, acceptable, and it made sense with our culture and our clients. And we had a committee that discussed these things until we had an approach. And at some point, I hope we have it written down as an art policy. And then also someone keeping track of whether or not you accept donations, or what happens to the collection of the works of art, and are there rotating pieces? How are they maintained? And so on and so forth. So oftentimes I'll say that many of these jobs fall on the shoulders of a single person, unless it's a large institution. You know, at some point we'll have to peak at the Mayo Clinic and their Arts and Humanities program, which is absolutely world class. But you know, it's still applicable and good for us in rural communities, and there's art and artists everywhere. So that's the good news. Um, I'll finish up with this quote that art in healthcare is we're talking about art installations, is a workhorse whose job is to distract, engage, comfort, calm, maintain a presence, provide clues to a social support, and help retain personal identity. some permanent pieces of art stand the test of time and perennially retain their appeal. It means year after year. But additional energy, pleasure, and surprise come for art that's ever changing. So it's this balance of the steadfast and then the work that's changing, to sort of keep the eye fresh. And again, I'll refer to the programs that I know intimately, and the one that I coordinate at Sanford Vermilion Medical Center has absolutely blossomed from a few months into the program. We were hanging some work that I might lead as a facilitator, but the residents there created, to where now we have over 100 pieces of local artwork that's been reproduced um, on high gloss aluminum plates, because that satisfies the infection control and can be cleaned. But we also have 4 galleries, 3 that are resident made, and the 4th, which is, I think I mentioned already, we have a new partnership with the University of South Dakota Galleries. And so they loan us a few pieces from their permanent collection. It's turning out to be once a year for the conference room. So the staff and administration can have a beautiful environment too. So the design of healthcare facility is extremely important, and it's a very good one to start with. So thanks for listening. Let's do this again soon.